All good? All good? Yeah. Nicole's all good?
Check, check.
I can hear you both out there. Excellent.
Excellent. Harrison, just in the nick of time. Good morning, everybody. How are we all doing? Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing? Hey, there we go. Still feeling a little sleepy from the weekend, everyone? Yeah? Yeah, I get it. Well, I hope you all had a restful 4 or 5 days since the last time we got together. And I hope that your second round of offer experiments are going well. I've heard from a couple people some great results, so congrats to those who have shared that with me. Today, we have our guest speaker here, Nicole, but we will finish up at around 12:30 with that. And this afternoon is open work time, just as a reminder for if anyone needs to scoot. Open work time after lunch, or if you need to head out, please do. Other housekeeping thing, tomorrow we have our other panel coming. That's for 10 a.m. And then remember, we have lunch here, catered by Trust Me Auntie as well as Pierogi Queen. And then we're going to Pottery for 1:30 tomorrow. Before we leave today, if you need a ride tomorrow, please come and see me so I can add you to our carpooling list. Sound good? Cool. Any questions before we get started today? Concerns? No? We're good to go? Amazing. Okay. Well, with us today we have the lovely, as always, Nicole Haney. Everyone say hi, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. Hi, everyone.
Nicole, I took a shot at writing a bio for you, so excuse me if I have anything wrong in here, because the old one I had for me was like 3 lines long.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. So, and I'm sure you probably have a newer one. I just didn't have time to ask you for one. So, I wrote something. I hope this is okay. You let me know if there's any inaccuracies.
Okay. I will. I'll get my pencil out.
Okay. So our guest today knows exactly what it's like to feel where you guys all are, where you're all sitting. I would say about 10 years ago, Nicole couldn't find a decent tasting healthy energy bar for a business trip. And so she went home and baked her own. People loved them so much that she quit her corporate job. No business plan, no food industry experience, no formal business training, and started selling at farmers markets. Does that sound familiar to anybody here today? Yes. So from there, she built an amazing company called Boho Bars into a nationally distributed brand, getting into major grocery store chains without ever taking outside investment. Her journey was such a compelling growth story that Ivey Business School eventually turned it into a business case that's now taught in schools. She was named one of London's top 20 under 40, and this should resonate with this room. She credits a big part of her success to going through an accelerator program, just like all of you are. And these days, Nicole coaches entrepreneurs, teaches at Ivey, previously at Fanshawe College, and speaks on stages across the country about building businesses with confidence. She's here to share what she's learned the hard way, so hopefully you don't all have to. So please join me in welcoming Nicole Haney with us today. How was that?
That was pretty accurate.
That was pretty accurate?
That was good.
Okay. So, in your own words, outside of my brief one, who are you and what do you do today, and anything that I missed in my intro or got wrong?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I don't think that you got anything wrong, so maybe I'll just kind of flesh it out a little bit. But I'm Nicole Haney. I'm faculty at Ivey Business School, where I teach entrepreneurship. I'm also a business and leadership consultant, doing one-on-one consulting for entrepreneurs and leaders. And I do a ton of talks and fireside chats and facilitation on topics, you guessed it, around leadership and entrepreneurship. But prior to being in the education and consulting space, I was scaling a food business full-time for about 5 years. So the idea for that started back in 2015, which is like an insane amount of time ago now. It flies by. And at the time, I was looking for something a little bit different in my career. I had been working in a beige cubicle, doing work that felt really beige, and I just wanted something different and more adventurous for my life. And so I didn't know what that was going to look like, but what I did know is that I'm really into health and wellness. So I live a very healthy lifestyle. I work out all the time. I eat a clean, whole food diet. But I also have a huge sweet tooth. And so because those two things don't really go together, I have been looking around for desserts that were made in a healthier way. And needless to say, I couldn't find them out there on the market in 2015. And so I started making stuff for myself in my home kitchen for a little while. And that stayed a hobby until I was going on this business trip. And I needed to bring a grab-and-go packaged product with me on this business trip because I had been told it was going to be just like jam-packed days, and I knew I needed snacks. And so I looked for an energy bar that I thought would be healthy, I thought would taste good, and I just couldn't find anything. And so I ended up making something for myself for that business trip. And then when I'm on that trip, all my colleagues were liking this bar as well. So that was the moment for me that I thought, I could be onto something here. Like, this might be a business and not just something I'm doing for myself. And so it took me about 3 months from that day to eventually build up the courage. But eventually I did walk into my boss's office, hand in my resignation. I quit my corporate job cold turkey, and I jumped into the food industry. So it started actually as a tiny health food bakery at the Western Fair Farmers Market. And then over the course of the 5 years after that, I packaged the energy bar that started everything and started selling it to retailers, and then scaled that across Canada. So eventually we were supplying about 300 retailers coast to coast across Canada, including major grocery store chains. So it was crazy. You guys know at this point how crazy it can be to start a business. It was wild. It was an adventure. And then eventually I made the decision to pivot out of the food space and into the education and consulting space, which is what brings me here today.
I love that. You can definitely tell you've told this story before.
Yeah, I've told it a few times.
3 months, that's a short window to go from idea to like, this could be something to, you know what, I'm quitting.
Yeah.
What gave you the confidence to just say, you know what, I'm doing this?
I don't know if it was confidence or naivete, maybe. Like, honestly, I don't think I knew what I was getting into at the time. And I just thought, like, what's the worst that could happen, right? Like, if this doesn't work, there's always going to be another desk job. There's always going to be another beige cubicle for me to go back to. I mean, not to downplay how terrified I was of the process. Like, I was terrified. I was like, am I actually quitting this, like, stable, full-time job? I had a pension. I had all the things, right? And I was pretty scared. I ran through like 15 million different spreadsheets to try and be like, can I make money at this though? And I felt fairly confident that I could. And then I just thought, you know what, life's too short. Life is too short to not just give it a go and try and see what happens. And so that for me was the tipping point where I was like, I have to just do this and see where it ends up. So yeah, that was when I kind of made the decision. But that day when I walked into my boss's office, I was shaking like a leaf. I was like, oh, am I really doing this? And then I did it, and I was like, it's going to be all right. Like, I'll figure it out.
I think at some point, pun intended, you have to take the leap, right? And
yeah.
I think your risk assessment's a lot different than other people's, you know. I think that short window, like, you know, I think obviously you're a business coach now, right? And you teach business to students. You know, most people here and many other entrepreneurs we've advised on are told to kind of, well, you should validate first.
Yeah.
You should make sure there's a bit of a parachute. Maybe keep the day job. Maybe de-risk this first. Like, but you did the opposite. I'm curious, like, what would you advise, now that you're on the other side of it, what would you advise startup entrepreneurs now, knowing what your experience was and where you're at today?
Yeah.
Would you say just go for it?
I think validate. I think looking back, as I mentioned, I jumped into it a little bit naive, right? I didn't realize how challenging it would be, and especially how challenging it would be to replace my corporate salary. It does take, and actually, interestingly, I didn't get this piece of advice until I was about 2 years into my business. But it takes an average of 3 to 5 years for a food or bev business to actually turn a profit. I did not realize that. I thought I could very quickly replace my income, and not being able to do that right away was exceedingly stressful. So I think it depends on the person, kind of what direction and what route you take. I think there's a lot of positive things that can come from like, jump in and try something, especially if the barrier to entry is fairly low. You're not going to lose a ton of money at it. You can really just go out there, put your product, put your MVP, right? You guys know MVP at this point? I really hope.
Yep.
Okay, put your MVP out there in front of other humans. Get some feedback from them. And if that feedback is positive, you can change and iterate as you go, right? So I would say validate the concept, validate the idea, validate the MVP, but don't wait until everything is perfect before you do take that leap.
If you see our sign right there, done is better than perfect.
Yes, yeah, oh my gosh, absolutely, done is better than perfect, right? You have to jump in. I actually I would suggest this, highly suggest this exercise. I make my students do a 60-minute MVP. So I give them a business concept. They get into groups. I give them a business concept, and I say, you have 60 minutes to make a website for this business concept, and one where you can actually take payments from somebody. So get out there. Do it quick and get it out there, and it's not going to be perfect.
I think you'd be happy to know I did that on, was that the second day?
Yeah.
The second day,
yes, love that.
We made them all do it. And then actually right now they are in there, so a week ago, they launched their first MVP offers.
Okay.
And now we're in the second week of that, of them starting to get their first feedback. So
amazing.
Yeah. And there's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of ups and downs right now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking on that, I'm curious, like, throughout the journey with Boho Bars, was there ever a moment where you kind of almost talked yourself out of this? I know in those early days it's very easy to be second guessing, but like throughout the journey of the years with it,
yeah,
did that happen a lot? Did it happen only once?
All the time.
All the time?
All the time. I kind of feel like if you're not asking yourself, what am I doing with my life? Like, at least once a week, are you actually an entrepreneur? Like, it is scary. It is scary. It is challenging. It gets easier, not because it gets easier. It gets easier because you get better at dealing with those challenges and at recognizing that you are capable of meeting those challenges and rising up and figuring it out. That's how it gets easier as you go along. But it is terrifying, right? Because you've put yourself out there. You've potentially invested some money, some time, some effort and energy into doing this thing. And it's your business, baby. Like, you love this thing. You want to see it succeed. And sometimes when you get that MVP out there, let's say, and you get a little bit of feedback that like, oh, your brownies are all right, but they're a little bit dry and crumbly, it hurts and it makes you question, am I actually doing the right thing here? But the answer is yes. As long as it continues to be right for you, you just have to keep pivoting, keep iterating, keep changing, and you'll be able to get it there eventually, right?
Was there one practice or one thing that you can recall that like really helped you get through those toughest days?
I think kind of just remembering why I was doing it, and not to sound trite, because everybody says like, think of your why, right? But I mean like why you're doing it on a really deep level. Like for me, I was doing it because I don't want to be, 90 years old, looking back on my life and saying, I could have tried doing this thing and I didn't. And I wish I had. I didn't want to have those kind of regrets. And so I think it was just remembering that like, there's a good reason why I'm doing this and I can figure it out. I think like having that growth mindset is really very important as well. Knowing that you might not know how to do the thing right now today, but you can learn how to do the thing. You can figure out how to do the thing. You can get better at doing the thing. if you keep trying. But if you quit and you stop trying, you'll never get better at it because you won't have the opportunity to. So I think those were the thoughts going through my head of like, there's a really good reason why I'm doing this. I want to like live my life to its fullest. And yes, it's hard and yes, it's challenging, but I can figure this out.
I think, as lame as it might sound, I used to have a vision board.
No, I love vision boards.
And I kept it above my, like, where my desk was at my house. As like, it was more or less of like the intent of a vision board, but like for the hardest days, like the things I put on there were more just like reminders of why.
Yeah.
Not like, I want to have a big house. It was, the things I put on there were intentional to kind of be like, it's a tough day, just you need to remind yourself why you're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love a vision board also, right? Because it really gives you, like, I'm a very visual learner. I've always been somebody that would like write down my study notes and have to look at them in order to study effectively. But that visual representation of what it is you want in your life and in your business, I think gives you a really like visceral emotional reaction, which is different than just like words on the page, right? Or like a concept in your head.
I want to talk about still some early day stuff, scrappy day stuff.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned in your story that you started with baking out of your own kitchen.
Yeah.
I would imagine, did you make your own logo?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Are you kidding? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what was the scrappiest thing you did that actually worked, and the scrappy thing that came back to bite you?
Oh, good questions. Good questions. Okay. There were so many scrappy things, honestly, because I bootstrapped it, right? And when you're bootstrapping it and you have like, I didn't have a ton of money, right? I know I said I had like a cushy corporate job and a pension and stuff like that, but like, I was a normal office worker. I had a normal amount of money. And so I was bootstrapping it. So I always had to find creative ways to do the things I wanted to do, but do them with a lot less money. The best example I think I have of this was when we needed better packaging. So the packaging for my product in the early days was very, very grassroots. I don't know if you remember the early packaging.
I remember seeing a couple pictures.
It was like, and also if you're not doing at least one thing that's very cringe right now, like, are you actually an entrepreneur, right? So the early packaging was in a poly bag, which is like a food grade plastic pouch is essentially what it is. So it wasn't cute. So we put the bars into this plastic pouch, little key seal at the top, and then my labels were literally those sheets of labels you can buy at Staples. And I had designed my own labels, and I was printing them out on my residential home printer, sheet after sheet, and then doing the peel and stick front and back of my product. And so it worked for a while. A lot of people in the food and bev space think that they need commercial packaging immediately right away. And I always tell them, don't do it. Because I got into, I think it was like 70 stores across southwestern Ontario with that early days like scrappy packaging. But there was a tipping point where it wasn't working anymore, and I was getting retailers being like, oh, I don't think we can like put this on our store shelves. Like it doesn't really look the part. Because I was getting into bigger and bigger and better stores. And so I knew I needed commercial packaging. And so I looked into commercial packaging, and it turned out it was going to cost me $36,000 to do my first round of commercial packaging, which I did not have, right? And so I went to a bank, and I asked for a business loan. And like a good entrepreneur, and they promptly said no, you cannot have a business loan because you're not making any money and you have no way to pay us back. And I was like, it's fair. But I still needed this packaging to look a lot better than it did. And so what I ended up doing was I had about $10,000 to spend on this packaging. It wasn't a lot, it was a decent amount, but it wasn't what I needed. So I went out and I got plain white matte packages, which looked very much like the commercial packaging I wanted, but they didn't have my logo on it. And then I got a graphic designer to design my labels for me so I could stop doing them myself it was in Word actually. It wasn't even in, I know, so bad.
It wasn't in Photoshop?
It wasn't even Canva. Like Canva wasn't even a big thing at that time. So
right, yeah.
one of my employees eventually told me about Canva, but I didn't know about it at the time. So I stopped designing my labels in Word and got a graphic designer to design them for me. And then I sent that design to a professional print shop and got professional waterproof matte stickers printed. So I was still doing the peel and stick, but it looked a lot better and a lot more professional. And then I went out and sold that product until we got to the point where we could afford to get that first run of commercial packaging. So I kind of had to take a step in between that I didn't really want to have to take, but I took it anyways because I was forced to. I had to, right? So I would say that was the one that really worked out really, really well. And then what didn't work out? There were so many things that didn't work out, Dave. There were so many things. I mean, I would say just kind of like talking about that scrappy bootstrapping side of things. Like, I would say that bootstrapping worked to a point, but I was trying to really scale like with the bootstrapping, and I was trying to scale in this linear way. And really there was a tipping point where I probably should have brought in an investor or two to make the business scale in the way that it needed to scale to support the growth we were seeing. So I would say like trying to be scrappy is really good and really important in the early days, but there is a tipping point where you need to kind of say, okay, we're going to stop being as scrappy. We're going to bring some money into this business so that we can do what we need to do to really scale this to the level that it needs to go to.
And so that's funny because you just led right into my next question around bootstrapping and early revenue and possible investors. Like, obviously that's something that you didn't go with.
Yeah.
Was that your philosophy? Like, I don't want outside investment?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it just how it worked out?
Was absolutely my philosophy for a long, long time, for sure. And especially like I would say in entrepreneurship, a lot of people are like, absolutely not, this is my business, I'm not bringing outside investors in. But especially in the food and bev space, guys, like there are certain industries that are like, nope, no investors. Like co-packing was a dirty word as well. Like you wanted to be your own manufacturer. And I think that kind of limits us to an extent as well, right? Because there is a certain point that you can get your business to with your own funds and with your own bootstrapping. But in order to be successful in certain industries, you do need a cash infusion into your business. And so there was a tipping point where I was talking with a mentor of mine, and he had said, like, have you considered investors? And I said, absolutely not. This is my business. This is my baby. Like, I want to control it. I want to run it. And he said kind of two things. One is bringing on an investor, the right investor, does not mean giving up control of your company or your direction or your ideas, but it is waiting for and looking for that right investor, and that's very important. And then the second thing he said was, and this really changed my thinking on it, do you want to have 100% of a cookie, or do you want to have 60% of a pie? And I was like, oh, I see where you're going with this, right? So bootstrapping is going to limit the growth that your business can see. And so if you bring on investors, you might be able to, if this is what you want in your business, you might be able to grow this thing to such an extent that you could be acquired for multiple millions of dollars, at which point, you've got 60% of a pie instead of 100% of the cookie. But it really depends on what type of business you want, right? Do you want to grow it and be acquired eventually for multiple millions? Or do you want to run this thing and just earn a regular income, right? Maybe you don't need investment if that's what you want to do. Do you want to, hand it over to your kids when you retire? Again, maybe you don't need investment to do that, but it just depends on the type of business you want.
Yeah, I think it is very individual.
Yeah.
Thinking about where each of our group here is very early in their journey. Some might assume they need funding before they start. Some might find you get to that tipping point where you're kind of making that decision. But what would be a piece of advice you would give everybody here to just make sure that you're putting your best foot forward to maybe be ready for that possible grant opportunity or possible financing or investors? When you're at this early stage, what's something you think would help them?
really making sure, like going back to that validation piece, like making sure that you validate the idea and that customers really want what you have to offer. Because you have to be able to sell your business, sell your idea, sell your product to other people. So whether that is selling a product to a customer or whether that is selling the business concept itself to an investor, you have to be able to sell that idea. So if you validate the idea and you see there is traction for this is what customers are saying that they actually want from us, then you can go to an investor and say, this is why this business could potentially work and why we can scale this thing, right? So I think it's always having that value proposition in your back pocket of like, this is why this works.
I think that's good. And you just led into my next question, which is perfect.
Amazing. This is great.
We're vibing here.
We didn't collude, I promise you guys.
Okay, so I remember this from your last time with us, which was maybe 3 years ago. And you talked about how one of your original farmers markets, that originally you were planning on selling donuts.
Yes. Oh, the donuts.
And I'm thinking about, you're talking about making sure you get your value proposition right. And often getting your value proposition right requires a lot of talking to customers, understanding what they want, understanding what the market really needs. And so let's talk a little bit about pivots and the importance of listening to your customers. So if the idea was that the bars could be an add-on in the beginning and donuts originally were the value proposition, and then you noticed that people were buying more bars than they're buying donuts, walk us through what you were watching for, maybe some of the questions that you asked initial potential customers. And how does a founder learn to actually see that signal instead of pushing the product forward that you're just falling in love with?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a hard thing not to fall in love with the product, guys. I for sure did this with the donuts. Like it was so hard. So I loved the donuts.
Who doesn't love donuts?
I mean, come on, right? And especially at the time, so gluten-free vegan donuts were a big deal. They weren't on the market. It was something that customers were kind of actively out there looking for. And I really put my heart and soul into making these donuts and making them so good. And like, I still dream of the donuts. Customers, like former customers, still ask me about the donuts. Like, can you make me like a batch of donuts? And I'm like, absolutely not. But like everybody loved them. And so they were the star of the show for a long time. And then I packaged these bars, right? And I'm selling them at the farmer's market as you said, like an add-on. I expected people would come into my bakery. At the time, it was a whole food bakery and buy these donuts, and that the bars were just sort of something that was there on the side in the background, right? But what started happening, what I started to notice, was people would come in, they would buy one donut as a treat for themselves at a farmer's market, right? You're at a farmer's market, you're walking around, you've got a coffee, you're going to buy a donut, you're going to kind of walk around and have this treat. And they would buy like 12 energy bars at the same time. And I was always like, they would come up and I would say, oh, would you like, a chocolate coconut donut? Yes, absolutely. And 12 of those bars. And I'm like, what is going on here? What's happening? And so I started to ask customers the question of, what is it like? I can see that you're buying one donut, but you're actually buying like a ton of energy bars. Do you really love the energy bars? Do you just like to eat them? Like, what's going on? And people said, yeah, actually, like, I like having this donut as a treat. The energy bars, what I do is I actually bring one a day in my lunch with me. Or I bring them with me when I'm going to the gym so that after the gym I can eat a snack right away. Or I can fuel myself for my workout. And so I started to realize, oh, people are consuming a lot more of these energy bars than they are of the donuts. And that was when I realized, like, okay, this is what the customers are looking for. So then I actually brought the bars to different like demos and expos and different events to kind of see, okay, are other people buying these bars, or is it just the farmers market customers, right? I wanted to test out the market and see if other people would buy them. And so speaking to your value proposition piece and the pivots that you have to make, and not necessarily forcing your value proposition, but listening to customers, I actually went to, it was an event at a Farm Boy here in London, And it was a vendor event. So there were a bunch of different booths, a bunch of different tents all lined up along the way. And we were all sampling out our products. And I brought the bars with me to say, okay, are these customers going to buy the bars as well? And I kept saying, do you want a sample of this whole food, all natural energy bar? And people kept saying no. And I was like, oh, maybe the bars are not a thing then. Interesting. Okay. And so I started asking customers as they came up, oh, why is it that you don't want to sample? I can't even give these away for free. What's happening? Why is it that you don't want to sample? And the next person I asked said, honestly, it's because I don't eat energy bars, because usually they taste gross. And I said, oh, that's interesting.
How were you, what were you saying exactly? Were you pitching it as a healthy energy bar?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I was like, would you like an all-natural energy bar? All natural, whole food, all natural.
Gotcha.
And he said to me, these energy bars sound like they're going to taste even worse than the regular energy bars that I eat because they're all natural, right? Is anybody in the health food space in this room?
Joyce.
Okay, yeah, a couple people. Okay. Get ready for people to tell you that they don't like health food. People will tell you until they're blue in the face, oh, I don't eat healthy food, ever. Because it tastes like cardboard, right? So if you're pitching it as a healthy product, you will have people be like, this doesn't sound like it's going to taste very good. So this guy said this. He was like, it sounds like it's going to taste like cardboard to me. And I was like, oh, interesting. These bars taste really good, actually. They taste like you're eating dessert almost. And he was skeptical, but he tried it. And he tried it, and then he looked at me and he was like, oh, these are actually good. And I said, yeah, they are. And he was like, okay, I think that you should stop telling people they're all natural, because you should start telling people they actually taste like a good energy bar, because it's really hard to find. And so I started testing that out, that value proposition on that day. And I started getting people flooding over to my vendor booth being like, oh, I want to try this like good energy bar. I've never heard of good energy bar before. And people were loving it. And so I think it's a lesson in not just not falling in love with the product and not pushing the one product that you want to see work, but also, even if there's a product that is working, listening to your customers about why it's working. Listening to your customers about why it is that they are buying it and why it is they want it, and not just pushing your own agenda, right? Because my agenda was the all-natural thing. That's why I made these. But the customers, it turns out, didn't really care about that. They cared about it tasting good. Yeah,
that's all they care about, right?
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I'm someone who mainly has to eat pretty gluten-free.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, anytime I go somewhere, and if we're talking like an energy bar or a treat or a dessert,
Yeah.
my instinct, it's that thought is always right here front of mind of like, it probably tastes like shit.
Yeah, it's going to taste like shit, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be cardboardy or really dry or...
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, like it's just living there. That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that story of how that one little piece of it. So did you ever get that person's name, or they changed your business?
Yeah, I literally have no idea who this guy was. I would love to send him a thank you card to be like, thank you for helping me figure this out. But yeah, no, I have no idea. He bought a bunch and then went into the Farm Boy, and I never saw him again. But yeah, he completely changed the trajectory of how I was positioning this product.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
I'm thinking too, I remember when we talked last, you talked about getting feedback, telling you to change some of your recipes, like something around coconut. I feel like that was the thing too.
Oil. Yeah, for sure.
And you were against it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the opposite. So you're hearing feedback, make a change.
Yep.
It works out. That's great. Hearing feedback, deciding not to change, and it works out. Yeah,
absolutely. So you have to be very particular and very cognizant of what feedback you do take into your business and that you allow to change your business. Because trust me, when you get your product on the market, literally everybody and their mom is going to have an opinion about it. So you have to know which ones to filter in and which ones to filter out, right? And so when I was at the farmer's market, every single product I had coconut oil in it, or shredded coconut, or some form of coconut, but mostly it was coconut oil that I was using. Because these were a plant-based product, I needed to give it some sort of like fat and moisture content without using butter, right? Or shortening or something like that. And so I was using coconut oil in these products, and quite a bit of it. And so I would have people come up to the farmer's market booth and they would try a sample. Also, if you have a consumable product, always be sampling it, because this will make you so much money, I promise you. So I'm sampling the product, and I would have people come up, they would try a sample, and sometimes they would say, oh, that tastes like really heavily like coconut, and I do not like coconut. And usually we were talking about like a middle-aged man that is saying like, no, these are not for me, right? And what I was saying about the health food thing, like, I don't eat health food. And so I would get this feedback, and at first it kind of freaked me out, actually, because I was like, if coconut oil is not the thing, how am I going to give the product that moisture and that fat content without the coconut oil? When it's a vegan product, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I kind of freaked out a little bit about it until I realized that guy, that middle-aged man that doesn't eat health food, is not my customer. He's not my customer. And so I don't need to necessarily incorporate his feedback into my business. He doesn't like coconut oil, but people who like health food like coconut oil, right? We use coconut oil on everything. We use it on skin, we use it on our hair, we eat it in everything we eat. Like, health food people love coconut oil. And so not once did I hear somebody that was into health food say, ooh, coconut oil. It was only ever people that were not my customer. And so I think it's really important to listen to your customer and take that feedback from your customer and make sure it is your customer before you incorporate that feedback.
It's a great qualifier question at a booth.
Yeah.
Do you like coconut? No? Okay.
Yeah, do you like coconut
Disregard
oil?
everything.
That's fine, we're good.
Okay, well, let's talk a little. So it sounds like, when we hear this story, you're doing sampling, you're talking to retailers about getting on shelves. There's this version of you that seems very confident, very comfortable with selling. And I'm curious if selling and sales came naturally to you, or if it was something that you grew into.
Yeah, absolutely not. I hated sales in the beginning, let me tell you. So has anybody had a sales job in the past? Terrible, right? Horrible. Yes, absolutely. So I had all sorts of sales jobs in a past life. I had done retail sales. I had done telemarketing, which is the worst, guys. Anyone who's done, yes, you've done telemarketing.
I've done all forms of it. I've done the cold calling and the other ones.
So terrible. Oh man, seriously, right? So yeah, and so like, it's not a pleasant experience, especially because usually when you're taught to do sales, you're trying to force people to buy things that they don't want or need, right? Like the telemarketing thing where you can't let them hang up until they say no 3 times. And you're like, this person's already said no to you. They don't want it. They've already told you they don't want it. And so sales was always a very uncomfortable thing for me. And so when I started Boho, I had always told everybody that would listen, I would have conversations with people that would come to my farmer's market booth, and we would talk about sales, and I would say, I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm never going to sell anybody anything, because I don't want to try and force people to buy, right? If people want it, they will buy it, like, we're good to go. And then I realized that I was going to be broke if I didn't try and sell things to people, because a part of being an entrepreneur is sales. It absolutely is sales, right? And so when I started selling these energy bars to retailers, my first couple of retailers I went to, I was very lucky. I knew a couple of people that owned retail stores, and so I just kind of went and was like, hey, Roxana, do you want to like bring these bars into your store? And she was like, yeah, okay, no problem. And then I started going to stores where I didn't know anybody. And I was like, hey, I have some energy bars. Do you want them? And they were like, no, we have other energy bars. We have like 50 other energy bars. And so I quickly realized I needed to learn how to do this and learn how to do it well. And so initially I started with those things that you're taught in all of your traditional sales jobs, trying to like force them, don't take no for an answer. And not only did it feel really gross to me and really uncomfortable, but it also just didn't work. The retailers weren't saying yes when I was trying to like overcome their objections. And so eventually what I realized, I kind of got sick of it, and I thought, okay, I need to learn how to sell, or I'm going to end up closing this business, or And I need to learn how to sell in a way that feels good to me. And so I thought, well, what if I just went in there and treated these retailers as if they were actual people, like human beings, instead of treating them like a store or a retailer that I need to sell to? Why don't I say, I'm going to go to Remark today and have a conversation with John and see how it goes, and just tell John a little bit about what I'm doing. And so I started doing that and just being a normal human and having normal, real conversations with other people. And that worked so well. Because it turns out that nobody likes being sold to. Nobody likes being sold to. And people like being treated like they're an actual human being. And so once I realized that, it started to feel a lot more natural to me that I can just go in and have a conversation with other people.
I think that's great advice. So that mental shift of, this is just a conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. There's just a conversation with another person. And I think something that really helped me get past that hump of rejection, because there is a lot of rejection in sales as well. Like, even when I learned how to do it in a more natural way, I still had a close rate of about 25%. So that means 75% of the people I was talking to said no, right? There's a lot of rejection in sales, and that's just a part of it. And I think the thing that really helped me get past that was realizing that if this guy doesn't say yes, that's okay. Because there's another guy that will say yes, and it's going to be a better fit for my product anyways, right?
What's something you could say to this group here if they're avoiding the sales?
Yeah.
Like, obviously you're helping, shift your mindset. You have to do it. Your business won't survive.
Yeah.
But there's still always that hump you just have to get over to just get started. Any little trick, any little tip you can give to anyone who's really just on that precipice?
Honestly, like, what do you have to lose? Like, I kind of feel like, what do you have to lose? So you walk into, let's say it is a physical product you're trying to sell to a retail store. You walk into that retail store and you try to do something. You try to have a conversation. You try to sell the product. And ultimately, it's a no. It's all right. You never have to see that person again. You never have to go into that store again if it's really that embarrassing to you. Well, like, really, at the end of the day, all you have to lose is a little bit of, maybe you feel a little bit embarrassed for a couple of days, and then it goes away. Like, it's not the end of the world, right? And I do think, like, honestly, one of the biggest pieces to being an entrepreneur is the willingness to put yourself out there and feel that embarrassment and be, like I'm saying, a little bit cringe. Because you have to, because you're not going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be absolutely perfect and polished when you first start. You have to be willing to do the things that might be a little bit embarrassing in order to move forward.
100% agree. I feel like I credit my ability later in life to sell to when I got a summer job doing door-to-door sales as a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
That I did actually for 2 years, and that level, you're like, oh, there's another door and another door and another door, and in the beginning it was brutal. And my self-esteem took a hit, but then after a while you're like, oh wow, actually, it becomes, I almost turned it into a game.
Yeah.
Gamified it a lot of, like, okay, like, let's see if I can just increase my door opening rate or my closing rate or how much I can get them. Luckily for me, I was a young kid trying to get people to buy donations to help clean up a local river. Yeah. So it's Citizens Environment Alliance. People were often helpful with that, but that rejection really helped a lot later, just being very familiar with it. Personally, in my opinion, I don't think there's any way to avoid it. You just have to do it and get over that. It's like exercising. In the beginning, it sucks for everybody who isn't doing it. Yeah. And then eventually, it's not so bad.
You just got to rip the Band-Aid, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of to your point about self-esteem, because I think this is a really important point here when we're talking about sales too. You were saying your self-esteem kind of took a little bit of a hit. And I think it's really important that you realize that it's not personal. And I used to hate it when I was younger, and people would be like, it's not personal though. And I'm like, it is personal though, because it's my business and it's my product and it's my baby. So it is a little bit personal. But retailers, customers, they all have their own reasons for saying no. And 99% of the time, it's not because your product sucks or they don't like you or what have you. It's for their own reasons. Maybe they don't have the budget to bring the product in at this time. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe they just brought a product in that's very similar to yours and they want to give it a go before they bring in a direct competitor. There's so many different reasons that people say no, and a lot of them, most of them, don't have to do with you or with your product.
Yeah, well said. Thinking around, like, obviously the day-to-day of that, of the gauntlet of doing sales, kind of like the messy middle part of building this business. Looking back, what's something that you feel like you might have got wrong for a little too long, or a mistake that you think like, oh, that almost broke the business?
Oh man. I would say, like, the thing that comes to mind I feel like there's probably a few things, to be honest with you. The thing that comes to mind first and foremost is really trying to adamantly do my own manufacturing for a long time. I think I really wildly underestimated what manufacturing would look like and what it would need. Because it is a whole other ballgame. It's like you've taken on the role of business owner and entrepreneur. And then I started hiring. You take on the role of leader and boss, right? So now you have two really large jobs on your plate. And then I also decided to take on the role of becoming a manufacturer when I knew literally nothing about manufacturing. And that is really not an easy task. Learning how to manufacture, especially a perishable product, it's a lot. It's a lot of hoops to jump through. It's a lot to figure out how to do it. And there are experts out there that know how to do it effectively. And so maybe it's less about like that niche problem of taking on manufacturing and more about understanding when to get help, understanding when to outsource things, understanding when there's maybe an expert that you can tap into that can help you do this more effectively than you trying to learn how to do the whole thing yourself. I actually had a group of students last term that were creating a two-sided platform, and it required building out the platform and coding. And they were like, we're going to learn how to code over the next 3 months. And I was like, okay, do any of you have a computer science background? And they were like, no, we're in philosophy. And I was like,
oh, wow.
There's people that can help you do this though, right? And so I think it's really important to have an understanding of like, what are your skill sets and where are you lacking? And those areas that you're lacking in, somebody else, that's their main skill set that they can help you with. So I think it's really important to have an understanding of like when to bring in those experts and those skill sets as well.
I agree. I had a business mentor. He always his saying in his company was always aces in their places.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
He's like, I'd rather go, faster.
Yep.
Because that kind of just served him as he was building his company as a startup. He's like, I'd rather go faster and bring in the right people.
Yep.
The hard part is, I think he had a much different perspective. He wasn't as much of a control freak as I was.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have that controlling nature built and programmed into them, and it's so hard in the beginning to like, A, identify your areas you might be weak, and B, be willing to accept that it's not necessarily weakness to outsource, that it is a strength to know, okay, where does the business need support?
Absolutely.
And I definitely stagnated my first few years from that mistake as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. You can't do everything, right?
Oh.
Like, we are all, of course, superhumans because we're entrepreneurs, and it requires you to be superhuman in some ways. But yeah, you cannot do everything yourself. You can't possibly know and have all the skills that are required to build a successful business. It's not possible on your own.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's talk about trying to do everything.
Okay.
And what that kind of does to you. Obviously, it's stressful. Yeah. It eats up a lot of your time, your energy. And I know that fitness for you is a big part of your life, and running specifically. And, we all have that place maybe where we do our best thinking or we need our relaxing. Talk about, your discipline for giving yourself that space to recharge, to survive, I guess, in all the ways, and maybe what boundaries actually held when the business got really demanding.
Yeah.
Because I think, an often misconception is like, oh, that work-life balance. But I find in startups,
Yeah.
There's times for work-life balance, and then there's times where that's literally just impossible.
Absolutely, 100%. And I agree with you that there does seem to be this myth that if you become an entrepreneur, you can somehow gain this like lifestyle and, that you only have to work for the 4-hour work week and stuff like that. And it's just simply not true in the early days, right? Like I worked so hard in the early days on my business and so many hours. And the joke is you quit your 40-hour-a-week job to work 80 hours a week, and like you quit your job making, $100 grand a year to make like 10 grand a year. And it's all true, right? It's really hard in the early days. So I would say you mentioned boundaries and setting aside time for things that I love and that I enjoy. And I think that I made the mistake of not doing that early on, and I really just gave every single fiber of my being to the business, and I think that was a mistake. I think that you have to give more than probably you're anticipating, that's for sure, but I would highly encourage everyone to ensure that they do have time carved out for things that are important to them, like family, like fitness, things like that as well. And so one thing I started doing, I got to a point in my business where I started to get really burnt out because I was giving every single ounce of my being to my business. And I knew it, and my friends knew it, my family knew it. And one of my friends said, why don't you just take Sundays? Just take Sundays. That's all, just one day a week. You don't have to take, Saturday and Sunday. You don't have to take evenings. Just one day a week, carve it out for yourself. And I said, you know what, I think I have to do this because I can't keep going at this pace. And so I started carving out Sundays for myself. And I would go like to Stratford and literally just get out of town. Because I was like, if I'm here, I'm probably going to be tempted to start working. So I would get out of town and literally like go somewhere else and do something else for a day. And that helped me start to create those boundaries and start to create that routine. And so it wasn't every day, it wasn't every week, but I started to find little chunks of time where I was able to set aside time to work out and to take care of myself and spend time with my family and go on little road trips and things like that. And I think it is important to have that time with the understanding that it's not a 40-hour work week. It's certainly not a 4-hour work week either.
Oh yes, Mr. Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week book.
Yeah.
I've had so many lifestyle entrepreneurs want to aspire to that right away, but no, I think that's really good advice. I think for me, I did evenings were always my thing. Like I shut her down at 4:30.
Awesome.
And it was like, nope, like the emails go off, the phone, that work phone goes off, and but that wasn't, I didn't institute that balance until probably year 3.
Yeah.
Because it was killing me, and I had family and friends that kind of were reflecting that back on me of, hey, have you thought about taking a break?
You should maybe need a little time. Yeah.
Right. I'm curious about, I have 2 questions here. I don't know which one to ask right now. Let's talk about a little bit of that growth in the middle. How did you know it was the right time to hire your first person, whether that was another baker or whoever that might have been in the business, and what did you learn about building a team that you trust through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a hard transition in a business because again, it is your baby, right? And I find the entrepreneurs that I work with, every single person goes through this same process of being like, but can I trust this person to like do the thing that I'm doing? And the answer is you have to, right? You have to have some level of trust at some point because again, you can't do it all. So for me, I ended up hiring my first person, Chanel. She was awesome. Chanel was my everything for so long. I hired her initially as a baker. And then she ended up doing so many different things. She was doing like deliveries for me in her Ford Taurus. Like she was doing like some cold calls for me at one point. She was handling customer inquiries. She became production manager at one point, and she was just phenomenal. I got very lucky getting somebody so fantastic that I could trust right off the hop. But I hired her because I was baking myself and I was selling it myself at the farmer's market. And literally I couldn't keep up with the demand because I was just the one person. I could only bake so much product. And the product was really time consuming and intensive to make. So there was really a cap on how much product I could make myself. And then I would bring it to the farmer's market on the weekend and we would sell out by 1 p.m. Everything would be gone. And then people would be coming and saying oh, I really wanted a donut though. And I could realize that those were missed opportunities and missed sales. And so I ended up hiring Chanel to help me bake, to literally just produce more product so we could sell more product. And to be 100% transparent, I did not have the money to be hiring her at the time. I did not have any, business hiring her at the time financially. But I ended up getting a grant. I can't remember what it was called at the time. I don't think it exists anymore anyways, but it helped me to cover half of her salary for the first year, which really helped to offset some of the costs associated with hiring because it's not inexpensive, right? And so I had hired her, and then once we got to a point where the two of us couldn't make enough product, that's when I hired my next person. The second person that I hired was a lovely human being, and I still keep in touch with her to this day, and she didn't end up working out. And so she just had other priorities in her life, and she simply could not commit to working in a startup, which is a highly demanding process. And so, unfortunately, I did have to terminate her, and we parted ways on good terms. She understood, because I gave her a lot of opportunity to improve, and by the time we got to that point, she was like, no, I know, I'm aware. And so there is a bit of a learning curve there. I think figuring out how to, hire the right people that are ready to work in a highly demanding startup environment. But then also on the flip side, there was a lot of learning curve in me, learning how to be a good leader for them and support them in the ways they needed support as well.
Yeah, there's that hiring process does require a lot of growth, a lot of learning. I feel like one of the mistakes I made was not having process and systems dialed up enough to be ready to even bring that person on. And I'm curious, if there were any habits or systems that kind of helped you as things got more complex, maybe things you realized and put in place after the fact, and things that maybe you stopped doing to avoid bottlenecking the business, like you mentioned. Yeah,
for sure. The standard operating procedures, it's so important. I would say, honestly, just telling people actually in so many words what you need them to do and then putting it in writing. That and it's crazy because it seems like a no-brainer, but it took me so long to figure out that they are not mind readers. I need to actually tell them what I need them to do, and I need to be clear. Clear is kind, is what everybody says, and it's not unkind to say, oh, you did it this way, and I appreciate that you were trying to do it this way, but I need it to be done this way. Clear is kind. And then putting it in writing. So this was actually, interestingly, this was the process I went through with the first person that I ended up terminating, because she didn't really have a good understanding of what it was I needed from her. And then I verbally told her what I needed from her, and she kind of still wasn't doing it. So then I put it in writing, and that's when she still wasn't doing it, and that's when we had a conversation to be is this the right fit for you right now, where you're at? And she was like, I don't think it is. But absolutely going through that process and making sure that they are aware and having it be written down somewhere.
Yeah, I definitely 100% agree. I feel like how one person interprets things versus another can also be very different.
Yeah.
That was definitely a learning curve for me as I had different people work with us and have to let people go. And I used to have my grandmother actually review all of my job descriptions as well as our instructional training documents, because I was I need you to read this and see, because she worked in HR her whole life. I was I need you to look at this and tell me what's missing, what's open to interpretation, because I kept getting myself in those situations where people are well, you didn't say it that way. Or you didn't.
Absolutely.
And that led to definitely, issues over the years. But
It's
Yeah.
such a smart way to do it.
Yeah, she was really good. And I often had a habit of being like glazing it to the high level,
Yeah.
right? And being like, oh, that makes sense to me because I'm living every
Yeah.
job in this business. And often I was not detail-oriented enough with my descriptions, yeah. Or I would not want to, I like that you said clear as kind. I think I've heard that in passing, but I always had the bad habit of just trying to be too nice in how I was. And then you miss the details that people actually need because you're trying to be too nice as a boss.
Absolutely.
That was a hard lesson for me to learn, was nice is always not great.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's assertive, right? A lot of people will ask me about this as well, because I was the nice boss too, right? I wanted to be everybody's best friend.
Yes.
And that leads to some dangerous territory. But like, it's not necessarily black and white. It's not you're a nice boss, you're a kind boss, or you're a jerk. Those aren't your two options, right? You can meet in the middle and be assertive. Be clear about what you need, but still be kind to your employees. One of the key things that I learned how to do that really shifted my relationship with my team was asking them what they need. So if you don't understand, if you're not doing it the way I'd like it to be done, instead of me making assumptions that as to why you're not doing it that way, asking you, what happened? Can you explain to me what happened? Why are you doing it the way that you're doing it? Oh, you're doing it this way because I haven't given you the tools that you need to do it the way that I want you to do it? Oh, interesting. Okay, what if we got you those tools? Would that make a difference? Okay, cool. Right? Like, and sometimes you can't afford those tools, and you have to do something adjacent to those tools. But asking them, like, why is there a bottleneck? Why is this happening? I think really opens up that door to you, for you to be able to give them what they need to do it the way you want it to be done.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Okay, like thinking about the internal team, and this idea that nobody builds kind of any business alone. I know that you've had a lot of organizations you've been involved with your time as an entrepreneur, and as well as transitioning out of Boho Bars, working a lot now and before with the Small Business Center, with Western and Propel, the Western Accelerator, and you've sat where they were before. Like, what did you get out of working with these different community organizations, out of the Accelerator, and what do founders waste about not accessing these community resources and things like that? And I guess, I think back to my own experience, because I was also in the Accelerator. I was also a student. I find with students, it's always hindsight. You're like, oh, I should have acted on that.
Absolutely.
And I know that community has been a big part of your growth and your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it goes back to that piece of like not trying to do everything on your own, right? Because when you're an entrepreneur and everything is new, you don't even know what you don't know. And so putting yourself into a situation like this inside of an accelerator program, it opens you up to all of these lessons and all of this learning that you didn't realize you needed. And so the whole idea of the value proposition and listening to your customers and getting that feedback, I had no idea to do that before I got involved I was in the Western Accelerator. Unfortunately, I was not in LEAP. I wish I had been. But I had no idea to even do that, to listen to your customers, to be asking the question of why is it that you're not interested, or why is it that you are interested, and leaning into that. And so I think there's a lot of learning that happens inside these accelerators. I will say, like, on a personal note, one thing that I miss the most, actually, about the accelerator environment is the community. Like, there is something to be said for surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs. It is such a lonely business building your own company, right? And even if you have a co-founder, it's usually just you and that other person. Or if you're a sole prop, it's just you. And maybe you have the support of like friends and family, but they don't really get it, because they're not in the day-to-day grind of it, right? So it's really rare that you get an opportunity to be inside of a room with a bunch of other entrepreneurs that genuinely get how hard it is and what it's like and the challenges you're going through, and take advantage of that. Like, talk to one another. If you're having a problem, go have a conversation with, was it Joyce? Yeah, talk to Joyce about your problem. And she might have a different perspective and a good potential solution to that problem. Or maybe you just have a little vent session and you're like, oh my God, last week was really hard, let me tell you, right? And like there's so much value in that community. So it's not just like the learning is extremely valuable, of course, but the community is very valuable. And I still miss that community.
Was there any other community resources you found really valuable, like for the business in those early days?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the first community resource that I took advantage of was the Small Business Center here in London. And so when I started my food business, I remember sitting down the first day of my business and being like, cool, I'm unemployed. I was at my dining room table, which became my desk for the next, however many years. And I was like, I have no idea how to start a food business. Who does, right? And so I literally Google searched how to start a food business, and up comes the Small Business Center. And so I reached out to them, and I ended up booking a meeting with Phil. Mm-hmm. And so I met with him, and then pretty quickly I ended up in their startup program, their startup food program. And so I went through that, and that helped me learn a lot as well. But London's a great community for entrepreneurs. I mean, there's obviously Western. I can plug Western's accelerator program as well if you're a graduate of Western. There's also Tech Alliance is a fantastic resource. If you're doing anything in the nonprofit or social enterprise space, Pillar is a fantastic resource. I tried at one point, side journey here. I tried at one point to go to Pillar because I was seeking funding, bootstrapping it. Right, you're always looking for the grants, you're always looking for the funding. And I went to Pillar and I tried to pitch my business as a social enterprise because I was like, no, I'm helping people get healthier though. So it's a social enterprise. And they were like, no, that's not it. But
the hustle.
yeah, exactly. Right. You gotta try. But they still were willing to have a chat with me and help me out a little bit. But yeah, if you're doing anything in that space, they can help a lot too. There's a lot of resources.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about getting towards the end of your journey with Boho Bars. So you scaled it to national distribution, you're in tons of retailers, and eventually there comes obviously a decision point, right? Do you keep scaling, which might mean working with a manufacturer? Yeah. It might mean more grinding, it might mean automation and bringing on more people, or this possibility of what's next for you and selling.
Yeah.
And you said before that your goal was never to have a business empire. Yeah. It was, I think a life with more flexibility, a life you enjoy. So walk us through how you actually made that decision and how you knew it was time to step away. Yeah,
absolutely. So I get asked this a lot because, spoiler alert, I did not sell my business. I ended up closing my business. So the process for this, I was at this point where we had national distribution, and we were in 300 retailers. It was coast to coast across Canada. I was in Sobeys, I was in Metro, some big guys here. And I sat down for coffee with a friend, and I was having a conversation with her, and as you do as an entrepreneur, the first thing you do is toot your own horn, right? When you sit down with friends for coffee. And so I was like, oh, things are really cool right now. I'm talking to somebody about, distributing into Tesco's in Europe and doing all these cool things, and we're growing, we're scaling it, we're having conversations with Loblaws and all this stuff, right? And she was like, oh, that's awesome, good for you, you're doing it, you're doing what you set out to do, this is amazing. And then she stopped and she was like, you don't seem happy though. And I was so taken aback by her saying that, because I've known her for 20 years now, but at the time I knew her for 15 years. So she knew me quite well, and she could tell that I wasn't really doing great on a personal level. And so she was like, sounds like the business is great, sounds like you're not doing great personally. And at the time I kind of brushed it off, and I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm fine, it's all good, I don't know what you're talking about, it's fine. And then I went home that night and I thought about it some more. And I thought about it some more. And then I stayed awake all night and I thought about it some more. And I thought, oh, damn, she's right. I'm not really loving this anymore. So I had gotten into the business, as you said. I'd gotten into it for lifestyle reasons, right? Like I wanted to get out of the corporate world. I wanted to get out of the beige cubicle. I wanted to make food for other people and share it with other people. And I think that is the reason that a lot of food entrepreneurs get into the food space, is that love of making something delicious, perhaps healthy, and sharing it with other people and seeing the joy it brings into their lives as well. And I was not doing any of that anymore. My job had become haggling with distributors over a couple of pennies and negotiations and things like that. And I could see the trajectory that the business was going on. And I knew the steps I needed to take to make it the success story that, you know, everybody had wanted it to be. I knew I needed to bring in an investor at some point. I knew I needed a co-packer and to outsource that manufacturing piece. I needed to commercialize the product because it still wasn't fully commercial and we were having some shelf life issues with it. So I knew what I needed to do, but I was looking at all those things going, I don't want to do any of this. Like, that sounds really terrible to me and not at all what I want my career to look like. And so that was the tipping point for me where I realized this is not the right fit anymore for me personally. I'm not enjoying this. I got into this because I wanted to live my life and enjoy my life, and I'm not. And I can't foresee that being the case in the future. And so I tried to sell it. There were a couple of interested buyers. But this is very much a cautionary tale. If you do intend on selling your business and being acquired eventually, start planning that process at least 3 to 5 years before you actually want out of the business. Because I was at the point where I wanted out, and the buyers were at the point where they wanted me in. And they were like, this business, you're the face of the company. This business has a lot less value without you in it. We need you to stay for at least another one wanted 3 years, the other one wanted 5. They both wanted 5. I talked the one down to 3, and then eventually I realized I didn't want to be in it at all anymore. And so I declined the offers and I made the decision to close the business. And then I pieced out to Belize for a couple weeks. I don't know if I told you that. And sat on a beach and recouped, and then came back and pivoted into what started as an advisory career and what's now education.
I think I like what you said about plan 3 to 5 years out. Would you recommend, like, now knowing what you know, having a more like regular check-in with yourself instead of like you have your friend who points out what is obvious to her, who knows you best, and often that is what happens. People who know you best can see things maybe before we realize them. Would you have any best practices as a coach now and as an educator of early founders of a best practice to set yourself up with right from the beginning so that it's not shocking when you might get to that tipping point, or to set yourself up for that exit?
I think absolutely. That's a really good question. I think it's always asking yourself that question of, is this right for me? Is this still right for me? Mm-hmm. Right? Because at the beginning, you're only doing it because it's right for you right now. But it might not be right for you in 2 years and 3 years and 10 years. It might not be right for you anymore because we all change and our priorities change and our lives change and our goals change. And I think that there is a tendency in entrepreneurship to be like, we're all like hyper competitive and hyper like, charging towards those goals and charging towards success. We're all so busy with our heads down chasing the success that we forget to ask ourselves that, right? Do I still, like, even if I got that success, is this still what I want my life to look like? Is this still serving me? Is this still bringing me joy, or like doing the things that I wanted it to do in the first place, right? I think, like, if you got into entrepreneurship to make money, then sure, maybe you're still on the right path if you're scaling it and you're going to be acquired eventually. But 99% of us don't get into this because we just want to be rich. Like, that's probably not really a great goal to have anyways. You might not be successful if that's what you're chasing. So really checking in with yourself, is this still what you want?
I 100% agree. I didn't know that you went to Belize to check out like that. I used to do, after a few years in, I would do like a long weekend, like 4 to 5 day solo camping trip.
Yeah.
That was kind of my like annual check-in, check-up with myself. Because usually I found like the first day is just like you're getting there, getting set up, and like I had so much like stuff in my head. I needed like a few days to just like not have any input.
Yeah.
To like actually be able to hear myself and try to listen to like, am I on the right track? Is this what I want? Are we going in the right direction? Because it's so easy to quickly get back into the minutia.
Yeah.
And then get like, also I was addicted to it. I felt like...
Yeah, you do. You get addicted to it. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's important to have those check-ins and give yourself that freedom and that space to kind of listen to yourself.
Yeah.
I think in our first week or so I gave you guys like a questionnaire, right? There was like that survey. I think some of those good questions are based on some of the things I used to ask myself. And I once, with my business mentor, he used to do like, he wanted like quarterly check-ins and I thought that was crazy. I'm like, I don't know if anything's changed from one quarter to the next. That at least annually worked for me, but I think that's important.
Yeah, to have that space, right? I think that it's really, really good that you would kind of like leave and block out all the noise.
Yes.
Because I think too, like as an entrepreneur, when you start to see a bit of success, what happens is that everybody cheers you on. Because everybody wants to see you succeed, right? And so when you hit that next milestone and people are like, oh, that's awesome, good for you, right? And like people are telling you that you're succeeding, you get addicted to it and you want more of that. And so then you just chase the next milestone and then you get that and then you keep chasing. But it's really difficult to kind of pull yourself out of that headspace and isolate yourself kind of and say, what is it that I want? Not what does my family want? What does my friends want? What do my customers want, right? Literally, what do I want? And I think it's really important that you do carve out some kind of time to be on your own and think about that, free of all of the noise, essentially. Yeah.
Well, I want to give everybody some Q&A time, so I kind of have one final question for you. And just thinking now when you reflect back on anything around your beliefs, like your beliefs of like, something that you believed about entrepreneurship early on, that I don't know if it turned out to be wrong or just different or, something that just changed, whether it was through your journey or something that you can see now. I'm curious to know if there's anything that stands out to you.
I would say the notion of like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I would say that's not true. Because even if you're doing something that you love, right? Which ideally, as entrepreneurs, we're all going to be pursuing something that we love doing. It is still work and it is still a job. And I think it took me longer than it probably should have to realize that. That it's going to be hard and there's going to be things that you don't want to have to do that you have to do, right? So no one wants to do bookkeeping as, an example. Most of us don't get it unless there's like accountants in the room. Most of us do not get into this business to crunch numbers. But bookkeeping is very important to do for your business. There's still, just like in a traditional day job, there's still going to be tasks that you have to do that you don't want to do, but you have to just do them anyways because that's your job as the entrepreneur, right? Until you get to the point where you can outsource some of that stuff and then you don't have to do all of the bookkeeping yourself.
Yes, or just marry an accountant, right?
There you go. Perfect. It's a good plan.
That's what I did. Okay, so I have some closing. I was very lucky. I had one relative who was an accountant, and then my current partner now is one. So that also gave me a crush, because then I was just like lean on them a little too much. But anyway, sorry. Okay, couple final closing rapid fires. Okay, don't think about it too hard.
Sure.
What are you reading or listening to that this room should check out right now?
Well, I love thrillers. You're saying don't think too much about it.
Yeah.
I love a good thriller. Honestly, like this whole idea of having space and time to not be in the business Sometimes for me, I need a fiction novel just to get my head outside of what I'm currently working on and my goals, and think about something that's not associated with your business. And so I'm reading an Alice Feeney right now. She's fantastic. She's the master of the plot twist. And so I would highly recommend a good fiction novel, a good thriller to get your head out of the game sometimes.
Nice. One thing you do every day that you think contributes to your success?
Honestly, this is so, whatever, but I swear by time blocking. I actually, I'm such a nerd about time blocking, because it gives you really focused time to work on the things that you want to work on. And so being really cognizant about what you are spending your time on and where it is going. So ensuring that I have time in the morning to answer emails. I know that's you're not supposed to answer emails in the morning anymore. You're supposed to do your own priorities first, but I like to answer my emails, get it all cleaned up. I have that time carved out in the morning, and then I don't look at them again for the rest of the day, right? Then I focus on something else. Maybe I have a big chunk of time where I want to do some deep work on something. I carve out that time. So I'm a huge time blocking nerd. I really think that it makes a big difference. By the end of the week, you've achieved so much stuff that you wouldn't have otherwise if you just left it to chance.
I jumped on time blocking about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
On trying to actually set boundaries and stick with it. It made a huge difference for me.
Yeah.
Because I always felt like I was all over the place. Yeah.
For sure,
yeah.
right?
Oh, I love it. Okay. Biggest lesson of the last 12 months?
Ooh, I'm trying to think about what happened in the last 12 months. Sometimes I feel like when you were introducing me and you were like, I don't know, your jobs have changed. Literally, if I get together with my friends will be like, what are you doing now? Because I'm constantly shifting and moving. So sometimes it takes me what did I do in the last 12 months? So I started teaching at Ivey in the last 12 months. I would say the biggest lesson is never stop learning. Even as a teacher, I'm learning right now. I'm learning how to be a better teacher. I taught here at Fanshawe for 4.5 years actually. And I was teaching business, and I thought I had the game down. So when I started teaching at Ivey, I was like, I got this. And I find I'm still learning, and I'm learning from my students. I'm learning, again, same idea of asking them what they need from you. I'm learning from my students, what is it you need from me in order to effectively learn inside of this classroom. And so I think that's been my biggest lesson over the last 12 months is, even when you think you've got something down pat, there's always something new to learn, and I kind of love that.
Okay, last question. If you could make up one rule that everyone in the world has to follow,
Woo.
what would it be?
Oh my goodness. Can I say ice cream every day?
Oh, I like that rule.
Ice cream every day? No, because I'm dairy intolerant, so maybe not ice cream, but chocolate every day. Let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's all have chocolate every day.
I just learned that the average Canadian between the months of May and September, on average, has 11 scoops of ice cream per week.
Ooh, wow.
That shocked me.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I feel like there are some people out there that during those months are doing ice cream every day. Yeah.
Shocking, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, 100%. I had district yesterday.
Yes.
Good, yeah.
So good.
Okay, well, I'm going to open the floor up to all of you. This is your opportunity to ask Nicole some questions. I don't have an extra microphone at this time, so just make sure you speak very loud. Yeah.
Can I choose, or do you want to choose?
No, it's your floor.
Okay. I saw back there.
My question is, how do you deal with the guilt of taking time off? Or when you're taking those Sundays off, how do you not freak out at everything? Because I find that I'll be working, going, and I'm like, okay, I should probably take a day myself, or with friends or with family. But then in the moment when I'm with friends and family, I'm always thinking, oh, I should be doing work, I should be doing this, and I feel like I get to enjoy it.
Yeah, 100%. I get that. It took a while. To be honest with you, it took a while for me to get past it. I would say having an understanding that taking downtime, this is going to sound very workaholic of me, but go with me on this. Taking downtime is work. It is work because it's contributing to how good you're going to be able to show up when you go back to work. And so it is contributing to you working. It's just not the way that you would traditionally see your work. So being able to see it as something that, this is making me sound like such a workaholic and control freak, but being able to see it as something that will help me work better, I think really helps me get past that guilty feeling. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
In the early days, how do you stay organized? I feel like I'm losing my mind. I've got like invoices coming in, product coming in, social media posts that have to go out, websites that have to be updated, subscribers, now meta ads, and I can't seem to adjust. Is there any tricks in those early days to keep organized?
Yeah, for sure. So I think kind of there's two pieces to this, right? So there's organization and then there's prioritization. And so having an understanding of what is it important for you to do right now and what can wait. I heard somebody describe this to me as you're juggling a bunch of balls, right, as an entrepreneur. And the key to staying on top of things is having an understanding of which of those balls is glass and which one is rubber. And so which ones, if they fall, will just bounce and it's going to be okay. And which ones do you need to keep in the air because they're glass and they're going to break if they fall. So I think it's like, we're always, as entrepreneurs, there's always a fire to be put out, right? Put out the fire. Of course, put out the fire. But there's certain things that maybe don't need your attention right now at this exact second in time. And then for everything else that's not a fire, I would say schedule it in. So like have a day, you said social media stuff, have a day where you batch content. And then that content you can roll out for the next week, right? So maybe Wednesdays is your content creation day. Do that on Wednesdays, and then the rest of the week it's taken care of. You don't have to even think about it anymore, right? And so that time blocking piece can really help with that, because you can say, when I was doing all the sales myself, I set up a system for myself where I was making sales calls, like I was picking up the phone and calling retailers on Thursdays. And then I would tell them, oh, I'm going to be in your area of town on, Tuesday of next week. Can I stop by for a visit? And then I would schedule all my visits on the Tuesday. So really having like certain days where you're doing certain tasks, I think can help with focus as well. Yeah.
On the product part of things, on the business, you want a specific months to be able to understand how things are going, safety, shelf life, and the other expenses that you can manage, so that you can have these things tested before now applying them to
Yes, there are resources, and no, I did not utilize them, and I would highly suggest that you do. I got into some issues with my product because I did not. And so shelf life is like one of those topics that is just, it's such a funny topic because it's so complex and complicated, and so many different things can affect your product shelf life. That nobody can say to you, oh, this is exactly how long your product's going to last, unless you test it. You have to get it tested. Please get it tested. I didn't, and then we ran into shelf life issues, and it was the bane of my existence for a long time. So definitely utilize those resources. So for food labs, Guelph has one. Fanshawe actually has a research institute, the CRI, that you can tap into here right at Fanshawe. They're fantastic. Guelph University has a food lab. There's the Niagara Food and Wine Institute. There's one at George Brown. And then there's independent specialists that also do this as well. So my friend Karen is a food scientist, True Leaves consultant. And so plugging for Karen, but she's very, very good at what she does. So if you need a little help, she can help you as well. Yeah.
So you had said like you decided to quit your job and go into business. Was there at any point that you had to take other kinds of work to support yourself? And if you did, what did that look like? Just because I face that issue right now where I'm like burned out because other people are asking me, well, to do things they don't think they don't care for. And I'd like to say goodbye to that, but I'm too risk averse right now.
Yeah, for sure. So I myself did not take any part-time jobs or anything like that. I was fortunate, so I was married when I started my business. My husband's an electrician. And so what we ended up doing, like after I got past the fantasy that I was going to be able to replace my corporate salary very quickly, after I got past that and I realized, okay, this is going to take a minute. This is going to take a minute, and currently we have a burn rate, we're losing money. And so how are we going to cover our bills? And so what we ended up doing was downsizing. So we literally moved homes. We moved to a smaller house with a smaller mortgage, smaller utility bills. We cut back on as much as we possibly could to cut down on the bills we were having to pay and allow it so that my husband's income could pay our bills while I got the business off the ground. And then I was like just hustling the entire time to like try and make revenue so that I could, make that burn rate as small as humanly possible so we weren't losing too much money. Got really scrappy and with the bootstrapping and trying to do the things I needed to do in the business for as little money as possible. And then looking for grants and funding through programs and through like business loans and government grants and things like that as well. So I did not. That being said, I would highly recommend like doing what you need to do to support yourself financially, because you won't have longevity in your business if you can't support yourself financially. It's so important that you have that peace of mind of being able to pay your bills, right? Because if you can't pay your rent, if you can't pay your mortgage, there's nothing more stressful than that. Yeah. So do what it is you need to do to look after yourself financially.
Find if you end up in that situation, you end up approaching a lot of things in your business from an extreme, like scarce mindset.
Yeah.
And it can put an unrealistic stress on where the business needs to be at that current time.
Absolutely.
It becomes kind of like a pressure cooker. I bartended. Yep. That's what I did at nighttime, like 3-4 nights a week with my business a lot, like just when I needed the extra cash, like, and make lifestyle changes, lifestyle choices, right? Yeah. I think if you're not taking care of yourself first, it's really hard to keep showing up every day when it's already really hard to get to that point where you're even making money. Yeah.
And I know you have like a limited amount of time available to dedicate to your business, and you want to dedicate all of that time to the business, but the business will cease to exist if you don't have the financial capacity to continue to pay your bills, right? So you do have to balance that. The business will get to where you want it to be in time. Mm-hmm. It will.
During your early days, you had a mentor. What are times new ideas kept popping up? Did you manage?
Oh yes, the ideas. We're all like creative, passionate artists, right? Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard. So my suggestion would be to have an outlet for it. So I had the farmer's market for a long time, not the entire duration of my business, but I did have the farmer's market booth, and that allowed me to kind of play around and be creative and try different things. And we had like feature donuts that we would do every week, and my favorite one was I love chocolate and peanut butter together, so we had this chocolate donut, and then we had a vegan peanut butter cookie. And so we took, and it was vegan, so it was safe to do this, but we would take a big scoop of the vegan peanut butter cookie dough and pop it right in the center of the donut, and then drizzle it with like a chocolate drip. It was so good. It was so good. But having that outlet to be able to be creative in certain ways, while also understanding that that's not your main line of business and that's not your main source of revenue, right? And so kind of having the room to play and have fun, while at the same time really focusing most of your time, energy, and financial resources on your bread and butter and the product that's going to move your business forward.
We'll do one more. Go ahead.
When it came to like skill gaps in the beginning, what resources did you go to learn those skills before you could hire?
Yeah. That's a good question. So I would say one of the biggest skill gaps for me was the financial side of it. honestly, I like blatantly ignored the financial side of my business. I'm sure your wife would not be happy to hear that, but
I did the same though.
right. And I think you do, because again, we're getting into this because we're passionate and we're creative and we want to do a thing, but we're kind of not really focused on the numbers so much. And so eventually I realized, like, oh God, I'm hemorrhaging money here. Like, I need to get a handle on this and figure this out. And so what I did was I tapped into like mentors and resources that I had in my network. So I reached out, prior to starting this business, I had worked at Ivey. And so I reached out to a faculty member that I knew at Ivey, Eric Morse, and he put me in touch with somebody in their accounting area group that teaches accounting to entrepreneurs. And he was like, talk to this guy. He's going to be your best resource. Yeah, right? And so it was great because I reached out to someone I knew, and he also identified, maybe this isn't my strongest skill set. I'm gonna refer you to somebody that it is their strongest skill set. And so I sat down with him, and he said, okay, I need you to fill in this spreadsheet. And he sent me a very robust spreadsheet that I avoided filling in for like weeks because I was like, I don't know how much it costs me to make these products. Like, why do you need to know that? And he was like, I need to know that to tell you like why you're losing money. And so eventually I filled it in, and he gave me a lot of fantastic advice of like, the problem isn't really your margins, the problem is you need to sell more. And so he was like, we need volume here, and you need to get your overhead down as far as you can get it down until you reach that volume point. So I think it's really important to not necessarily, you might not know the right person to go to, but you have people in your social circle that you can go to say, I'm really struggling with this piece of my business. Do you know somebody? Or can you help me? Or do you know somebody who knows somebody that could help me? And people will be very helpful in trying to direct you to the right person.
Good question, for sure. Okay, final question. What's next for you? What are you excited about over the next, I know you had to transition the last year to Ivey, but any big plans on the horizon or anything you're excited about?
Yeah. So just continuing to teach for Ivey. So right now I'm teaching 3 courses, all in the entrepreneurship area group. And my hope over the next few years is that I get full-time. So knock on wood that happens, that I get full-time. If anybody knows somebody at Ivey that can put in a good word. So teaching full-time, continuing to do the consulting as well as kind of a side hustle, and some leadership development work with some organizations in the area, and just kind of continuing to have that creativity and that variety in my life. I really love the variety piece, so kind of continuing to be involved in things like this, and in different areas in the community. Yeah.
Well, we wish you good luck over the next little while, and hopefully some of that variety finds you back here with us at Fanshawe in some capacity. But thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing with us today and for being part of this year's cohort. Thank you all for your great questions. Let's give Nicole a big round of applause. Okay, well that finishes up for today. The rest of the day is all yours until 4 o'clock. If you are sticking around, we have office hours starting at 1 until 2. And then if there are any additional questions regarding the field trip tomorrow or guest speakers tomorrow, just grab me before we head into lunch. But thank you all. Hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you again, Nicole.
Thank you.
I'm just going to turn off the record.
Run away just yet. If you did want to check on Nicole online, I put her LinkedIn on our Mighty Network as well, okay?